for future generations.
My Lords, I congratulate my noble friend Lord McGuinness of Kilwinning on bringing this debate, and in advance I congratulate my noble friend the Minister on the maiden speech that he is about to make. It's a pleasure to follow the noble Baroness Lady Foster of Adamsea in her speech. There are two sorts of speeches made in this sort of debate. One is, like her speech, consists of a coherent and flowing and logical argument, and the other consists of vaguely relevant but disconnected points. Mine is going to be more of the latter character. I hope noble lords will bear with me to some extent in that regard. My first 2 points are connected, and that is, we need to remember that this union we're discussing has always been a voluntary union and a union of parliaments. What happened, by that I mean, is that, back in 1706 or thereabouts, the Parliament of England and the Parliament of Scotland voted democratically to unify into a single parliament. It was not a union of monarchies. The union of the monarchy, of course, had happened 100 years earlier. It was a parliamentary union, and it was done on a voluntary and democratic basis. And in 1800, the same pattern was followed in regards to Ireland. Now, it may be objected that the parliaments of those days were not representative of the whole population, but I mean, these were the representative bodies that functioned in those days, and full enfranchisement wasn't achieved until barely 100 years ago. But that's what we had. And some things flow from that that are really quite important. First of all, we don't sufficiently appreciate how unusual we are in that regard. The United States of America was a voluntary union until people tried to leave, and it resulted, of course, in a civil war in which more lives were lost than the United States has lost in all the wars it has subsequently fought. Germany is a federal union, but there is no provision in the German constitution for a federal land to leave the union. The thought that part of France might leave France, of course, is an almost inconceivable thought in French mentality. Secondly, I don't think we appreciate, that other countries appreciate how unusual we are. And we don't really understand how they think. When you think of the attempt to secede in Catalonia not so very long ago, and the response of the Spanish state, which was a quasi-military response on the streets, followed by imprisonment and exile. The leader of that revolt is still in exile today, even though there are attempts to bring him back. That sort of response is inconceivable as far as the United Kingdom is concerned. We have accepted, in the Good Friday Agreement, that if the people of Northern Ireland wish to vote by a majority to unite with the Republic of Ireland, then that is what is going to happen. It's inconceivable that anything else could happen. There would not be the sort of response that we saw in Catalonia. And similarly, although it is not subject to an international treaty, we accept, I think, that if there were a majority in Scotland for leaving, however sad we might be about seeing Scotland depart, and indeed Northern Ireland depart from the Union, but if there were a majority in Scotland, we would have to deal with that at that time and respect that decision. The second part of my thesis, that we are a parliamentary union, means that the deep devolution settlement that we entered into at the beginning of the 21st century was much more radical in its constitutional effects than it was presented as being at the time. It was not simply an administrative arrangement. It was a breaking up. It was not simply a creation of a new tier, if you like, of local government, which would be consistent with a parliamentary union. It was a breaking up of that parliamentary authority, which we have not fully incorporated into our thinking even today. We say we regard it as a stable and enduring settlement. It is not a stable and enduring settlement in the eyes of nationalists. In the eyes of nationalists, it is merely a stepping stone to something else, and we must always be aware of that and stay ahead of it. What is not the answer to our constitutional confusion that we have at the moment, however, is adoption of federalism. This has been proposed by Gordon Brown as a means, he would say, of saving the Union. My Lords, it would not save the Union, it would destroy the Union as it exists and replace it with something wholly new, something untested and ill thought out. So, nonetheless, despite all of that, we remain a voluntary union, and that voluntary union is essentially based on affection. We are attracted to each other. It is the fact that we choose to stay together, the fact that we choose to do so is because of the affection that exists. Not the coercion, but the affection. And that is our strength, and that is what we need to build on. But none of it means that we need to be, or we should be, insouciant about the continuance of that union. And here I want to turn to a sensitive subject of language. It is a sensitive subject, but we shouldn't be too sensitive about discussing it. There is no doubt, and Sinn Féin fully appreciate this, that the use of language is a tool for promoting nationalist sentiment. And when I look at Wales and I see the almost linguistic fascism that now exists in parts of Wales, I am deeply concerned that we will find ourselves on some occasion in the future when we are holding, rather like in Scotland in 2014, when it was only halfway through the referendum campaign, we realised that unionism might actually lose the referendum in Scotland. So out of touch were we. And I do not want to see something like that happening in Wales. And finally, I turn to Northern Ireland. There is very little, of course, I have to add to speakers who have spoken already, who come from Northern Ireland. But I will just second what has been said about the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Windsor Framework, and I speak about them not from the point of view of Northern Ireland, but from the point of view of the United Kingdom. So it is not the trade aspects that concern me directly. Those have an effect on the lives of people in Northern Ireland, which has already been addressed by the noble Lord Dodds of Duncairn. It is the constitutional implications of the fact that part of the United Kingdom is subject to laws made in the European Union by a foreign parliament with no democratic say by the people who have to live under those laws. This is a classic definition of colonialism, and it is a humiliation to this country that we tolerate it. I cannot think of any other country, democratic country, that lives under such arrangements, and it is, and now explicitly acknowledged to be, a constraint and an impediment on the way in which we govern the rest of Great Britain. The Chancellor himself, I believe, said only the other day that he was constrained from altering VAT rules by the fact that he was not allowed to do so in Northern Ireland, even though he had the power to do so in Great Britain, and this would create a disparity which prevented him from making a change. That Northern Ireland Protocol was negotiated by a government with no majority on its principal policy, the Brexit policy, no majority in Parliament, which had had its principal tool, negotiating tool, that is the right to walk away, taken away from it by Parliament. It is not, I second the noble Lord Dodds of Duncairn, a stable arrangement. It is going to have to be addressed at some point if this union is to survive and if the United Kingdom is to thrive as an independent country.